I've been preparing a message on the book of Philippians, and as I've done so, there's been this little old tune whizzing around my head that I've been inflicting on the office, I have to say. And I have to confess, I don't know this from Sunday school. I know it from The Simpsons. Sorry about that, not to denigrate Sunday school teachers, but I actually, well, my story of Sunday school is a rather long one, but the book of Philippians is a great book. Who likes Philippians? Some of us aren't sure. Who actually thinks Philippians shouldn't be in the Bible and is a waste of time? No, we're okay. All right. A little song, and I only know the bit that the Flanders kids would sing. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. We'll try that again, shall we? I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart. That's all I know. So I've been singing this little tune over and over and over and just driving absolutely everyone bananas with it. And as we come around the book of Philippians, and that's not thunder, that will be the Discovery kids discovering how thin the floors are, by the way. But that's good, isn't it? I love the book of Philippians. In fact, the city of Philippi was a very special place in the Roman Empire. In fact, it was given the status of, I need to read this because it's in Latin, Ius Italicum. I won't say that again because I've said it wrong. Those of you that are Latin speakers, and I'll just pop that there to tempt you. The city of Philippi had this special status which meant the rule or law of Rome. Now you might think that every town that was occupied had that, but no, Philippi was different. It was a special place in the Roman Empire. Its architecture began to mimic that of Rome. Its dress code, the fashion of the day, would imitate that of Rome. The Roman law was vigorously employed and deployed amongst the people. In fact, if you were a Roman from Rome and went on holiday there, you could say you're going to the Rome away from Rome. There was a small Jewish community there, and I don't mean small as in height, but there wasn't an established synagogue in Philippi. To have an established synagogue, you needed 10 Jewish men. There weren't actually 10 Jewish men there. But what there were a group of women. And if you want to read about the formation of the church in Philippi, you can read all about it in Acts chapter 16. Because Acts 16 is all about how the church in Philippi came around. And we read that the apostle Paul met some women who had gone to pray by the river outside of the city boundaries. That's Acts 16 verse 13. Why had he done that? Because why were they doing that? There wasn't a formal synagogue established at all. And you discover in Acts chapter 16 lots of interesting people. You'll read about Lydia, a seller of purple, a businesswoman. The first convert in the church met in her house. You'll read about a slave girl that was possessed by demons and how that she was being exploited and used for personal gain of sorcerers and all these kind of people. And a demon is cast out of her and they lose their income. And Paul and Silas are thrown into jail for breaking Roman law. It's all there in Acts 16. Leading us into detestable practices that are against the law of Rome. Setting people free. Not allowed, but really it's to do with commercial enterprise. And then you have the jailer at midnight as Paul and Silas sang, I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. But at midnight after a good flogging, would you feel like singing that? But they might have. And they sang, and there was an earthquake, and the prison is flung wide open, and they still remain. Even though their chains have fallen off, they remain there, knowing that if they escaped, the jailer would be put to death. And they leave the jailer and his household to face. So when they get out of jail, what do? They introduce him to Lydia. And say, well, there's some Christians here already. And that's basically the formation of the church. And Paul seems to have this church as a favorite place in his heart. He stayed in touch with it. If you read in Acts 19, verses 21, and I'm just going to be throwing lots of verses out. You'll probably need to just watch this back on DVD or listen to it on the interweb. But you'll discover that in Acts 19, 21, 23, Paul sent Timothy there. Philippians 2:19 tells us that as well. And then Paul, if you look in Acts 20, verses 1 to 3, visited the churches in Macedonia, which is the area where it was, Philippi. He visited them twice more. He likes it. But Paul develops a theme in here, and the theme is... Okay, we might have a competition. If I had a camera that we could just show you all on the screen or something, we won't do it, but see who is the most joyful this morning. But immediately the false joy rises, doesn't it? The false smile. Look happy. They might be looking at us. There is a theme here, and I'm going to try and do 5 themes, the 5 themes of joy that come out of this book, but I may only get through 3. So we'll see how we go, shall we? Firstly, we discover the joy of rejoicing. That might sound a bit strange. The joy of rejoicing. Surely joy is rejoicing. But the joy of rejoicing. We discover that the Greek word for joy, the noun is chara, which is to experience gladness. Chara you can extend to charismatic. Ooh! Some of you are amazed at that, aren't you? I got this out of a reference book. I didn't do Greek. I know a little Greek, though. He's got a cafe around the corner. Yeah, all right. 6 weeks, you know my jokes. Charismatic. There is a sense of rejoicing, merriness within that. The verb chairo means to rejoice and be merry, which is closely related to charis, which is grace and favor, or the experience, and that's the key word, the experience of joy. Something that might be far removed from some of us, particularly when we're going through trials and difficulties and hardships. But what's being described here is not a false joy that we put on, and we come on a Sunday morning, we put on our Sunday best, and we put on our best smile, and people come up to us and say, how are things? It's fine, but you know that actually it isn't fine because you've just had the, sort of the volcanic eruption of bitterness sweeping over us, because sometimes we go through stuff, don't we? And one of the things that Mike prayed about this morning is that things have been stolen, but at the end of this message I want to change our theological perception on joy. I want to submit to you lovingly that joy can never be stolen. And I'll explain why, eventually. The joy of rejoicing. Sometimes we act as though the Christian faith is just about somber sobriety, but it isn't. It's about the joy of the Lord in our hearts. And there are several areas that in the book of Philippians, Paul begins to express where this joy comes from. He says that there is joy in friendships. Now, he doesn't use that phrase. I'm just condensing this down. There's so much here to boil down into a simple phrase. But he says in Philippians 1, verse 4, in all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy. Why is he praying with joy about the people that are in church of Philippi? He's praying with joy because there is a link of friendship there. When was the last time when someone thought of us that thought was a happy thought? Well, we don't know because we don't have to be mind readers. But if we translate that and say, when was the last time you thought about somebody in the church and the fellowship and thinking of them brought you joy? Only one person nodding. All right, 2 people are nodding now. But actually, that's the kind of lives we should have. One of the things I've noticed, and I am going to skim treetops this morning, but one of the things I've noticed since I've been here is folks have said to me, it's impossible to have a friendly church when there's so many of us here on a Sunday morning. Now, it's actually not impossible to have a friendly church when there's so many of us here on a Sunday morning if we are all friendly people. In theory. Anyway, but what I would say to you is this. I love big church. I think it's great. I believe that the Lord is destined for this church to grow and get bigger. Yeah, that's great. I think that's wonderful. But I also believe in small church as well. So how do we make a big church small? How do we make a church of this size feel small? Life groups. Those of you life group leaders would have heard me say this already. Life groups make a big church small again. That's where we discover our friendships. That's where we discover the prayer support. That's where we discover the outlet and discovery of our gifts. We discover all that in life groups. Let us not expect Sunday morning to meet all the facilities and things that we require for a friendship, because it never will do it. And let me tell you something. If there were 50 people in the church, Sunday mornings wouldn't do it either. Because as soon as you have more than 12 people, it's impossible to keep and maintain solid, intimate, and deep friendships. That's just the way it is. So if we want to make a big church small, join a life group.